Good morning.
Good morning. There we go.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, Chair, but we can't hear you either.
Okay, all right. Got a little camera malfunction. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This air conditioner in my office is really struggling. It's only 10 o'clock.
Well, good luck.
Yeah, we've had our struggles in this building with our heating and our air conditioning, but we're grateful to have it today. Morning, Councilor.
I know that I can attest that Christian's office with the wall of light there gets incredibly warm, which I guess is Commissioner Burschauer's side of the wall anyway, too.
Yeah, we're all.
Yeah, it's warm. I've got
down.
the AC going already. Started about an hour ago.
All right, well, it looks like everybody is here. So at this time, we'll go ahead and call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners informal session for August 12th, 2021. And at this time, I'll ask Ken, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. And we'll go ahead and take a look at our joint calendars. Is there anything to add to the calendars, commissioners?
Chair, I don't think there is. I just want to note that the correction was that it's Monday, August 23rd for Water Task Force meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And
Anybody else?
virtual.
I don't believe I have anything. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we'll move on. And we've received public comments, and I want to thank Carolina Rook for getting those public comments and everybody who took the time to write to us and send them in. And also want to say a special thank you to Carrie Hinton for getting our Zoom meetings up and running each week. We have no work session, no department updates. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, Chair.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. On to item H, which is old business. Item H1, consideration of approval of a request to amend the Second Amendment and restated solid waste disposal license agreement between Yamhill County and Riverbend Landfill Company, retroactive to July 1, 2021. And this was continued from July 22nd. So joining us, I believe we have with us Waste Management's Jackie Lang and their counsel, Tommy Brooks. So they'll be joining us to ask any questions, and maybe we can get up to speed on where we left it last time. My understanding is that County Council and staff were able to have some discussions, bringing the board's concerns and questions regarding their initial proposal to them, and during a discussion and came back with a revised proposed contract, which we'll be discussing and perhaps voting on today. So Christian, do you want to bring us up to speed on that part of it, or is that pretty much it?
Yeah, that is pretty much it. As you described, Ken Friday and I have had some conversations with Tommy and counsel for Waste Management. We discussed some of the same questions and concerns that the board had discussed the last time this was before you. And then this is the latest revised draft that we've received from Waste Management. There are a couple of significant modifications, which we can sort of tick through if you'd like, and then you can discuss. Or we can just go straight into any questions or comments that the board might have for Tommy or Jackie on this latest draft.
Thank you. So the material changes have to do with the term and
Correct.
with the license fees payable to the county. So those have significantly been revised. So we'll go ahead and commissioners, do you have any particular questions on these two revisions? And what questions would you have for Mr. Brooks or Ms. Lang? Yes, Commissioner Bershauer. And welcome Ms. Lang and Mr. Brooks.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. So one of the questions I had was, we've talked about how waste management provides fairly affordable power to a significant number of households in McMinnville through Mac Water and Light, based on the methane gas from the landfill. I'm not familiar with the contracts that you might have with Mac Water and Light in terms of, how long you are expected to provide that power. I know that it was mentioned that based on the current contents of the landfill, that you could probably get 20 to 25 years out of the gas that's being produced before it really wanes to the point where it's, not going to be usable. But what do your contracts look like now? Because I noticed in this revised amendment that it wasn't very solid in terms of the sustainability of that contract. It said it was, you'll continue to provide the gas power to the extent that it's available, which makes sense because it wanes over time. But I guess my concern is that, how is that going to be really sustained over the next 15 or so years if we extend this, to make sure that those families are still receiving that very affordable power source.
So Tommy, I'll start this answer and then defer to you. Commissioner Bershauer, we've heard you loud and clear that the economic development benefits connected to the low cost power, and also that the innovation aspect of renewable energy is important to you and to others in the county. So that's important to us too. I mean, that's why we brought that technology to Yamhill County 10 years ago. We went back after our last session and we looked at the numbers on gas flow, and I'm very pleased to report that all of our predictions are not predictions, but our calculations, projections call for strong and steady gas flows for at least 20 to 25 more years. So that's the good news. The agreement is separate from the licensing agreement. The contract that exists with McMinnville Water and Light is a separate agreement. We have about 10 more years on that agreement. Tommy, if you want to provide other specifics related to that agreement, I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is it's structured like a normal power purchase agreement, and it had about a 20-year term on it. And so there's, as Jackie said, there's about 10 years left on that term. The reason the language is written the way it is to acknowledge a couple things. One is that, there is this separate contract Jackie mentioned with McMinnville Water and Light. So Riverbend specifically is there to support that and make sure that the gas is available for that. So for that next 10 years, we don't see, need to change anything. Whether or not that extends past that, I think is the question that's relevant, and sort of why we've synced this up in part to the longer term is that, as Jackie said, there will still be gas produced at the end of the term of the current gas agreement. And so by making sure Riverbend is still around and able to operate, we'll have that chance to do another agreement with McMinnville Water and Light. We don't know if we'll have that chance if the landfill is just not operating.
What degree does this agreement continue? Let's say after the landfill were to be closed, how long could you sustain this provision?
I think that gets to that gas curve issue that Jackie described. So if we don't do anything, I think the gas curve it peaks in 20 to 25 years. It's not that the gas goes away then, that's just when the curve starts coming back down, if I've got that right, Jackie. So that's, if like I said, the gas will continue to be produced, at least in the near term, and we'd like to be able to capture that.
Thank you. Commissioner Kula.
I just want to check, Commissioner Bershauer, you had asked, this is related to the gas and Mac Water and Light question, but Commissioner Bershauer, did you have anything more? I don't want to get us off your topic.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. I guess I'm trying to think of, okay, if we go down the path of 15-year extension, it sounds like there's no issue with providing the gas for another 15 years. If we don't do that though, and you move into more of a closure process, and there's all these types of regulations around that and costs to the closure process, what then happens to that contract or the longevity of that contract?
Yeah, so I think all we know for certain is that the contract will go for about 10 more years. Whether or not it can be renewed, or really more importantly, for how long it can be renewed, that's the uncertainty. So if Riverbend's not operating, is going into a closure status, that the economics of everything changes, and the knowledge of the gas curve will be more certain then. And so whether, to what degree could that contract be renewed if Riverbend's not operating, we just don't know. What we do know is if we are operating, we will be producing gas, and we will be able to at least have those discussions with Mac Water and Light.
Thank you. So I just want to acknowledge that our planning director, Ken Friday, has joined us. So if there's anything that Mr. Friday, you want to add to this portion of the discussion, but anyhow, go ahead, Ms. Lang.
I just wanted to add that when a company is negotiating new contracts or renewing contracts, like we will renew with McMinnville Water and Light, stability at Riverbend is an important part of it. So the licensing agreement is a component of our stability. And as we seek to renew the agreement with McMinnville Water and Light in 10 years or so, that will be something that McMinnville Water and Light will look at. So we want to be the most stable partner for renewable energy that we can be for McMinnville Water and Light.
Thank you. Commissioner Kula.
Thank you, Chair. I have so many questions for you, as Chair Sterrett might imagine, but I'm going to start, since we're on the topic of methane being emitted from the landfill. I'd love to know first, Mr. Brooks probably is the best one to answer this question, but what is the state law around capturing and flaring gas from, methane that's emitted by a landfill?
Commissioner Cole, I don't have a good answer for you. That's a pretty broad question. Are you just asking if there's a regulatory structure that does require that?
Yes. What is the requirement for the capture of gas that is emitted from a landfill, and what's the requirement for you around flaring it?
Yeah, Jackie, you might know more than me actually on this one. I do know that there are requirements to manage the landfill gas that is produced and to capture it. Sometimes it gets flared, sometimes it gets converted into usable energy. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head all the ins and outs of that and how that applies to different facilities, but those regulations do exist.
It's a series of regulations, Commissioner. You can think of it as a package of regulations. Monitoring and reporting. In fact, Governor Brown has initiated a new rulemaking connected to methane, and we're currently involved in discussion with DEQ about that. So those regulations are often changing as we learn, as we improve our technologies to better protect the environment. It's mostly about clean air when you're talking about the regulations related to gas emissions.
So you're required, the short answer then, since I didn't hear it, is you're required to capture methane first, yes or no?
Yes, the requirements do, it depends on the size of the landfill. But yes, there are a number of different regulations related to capturing methane.
I think the more precise word is probably to manage it.
Manage it. Yes.
Sometimes that is through capture, sometimes it's through other management techniques.
So is there something different than capturing besides just letting it go?
Well, flaring is one process, and then using, excuse me, collecting the landfill gas and using it to run the combustion engines at the renewable energy plant is a different type of use.
Okay, so those not. I was thinking collecting or capturing was a kind of a general term, but so you're allowed to flare, because I was told, and there's comments in the record that suggest that you actually cannot flare. So can you just explain this a little bit? What I'm trying to get at, Ms. Lang and Mr. Brooks, is that you have somehow made your contract with Mac Water and Light to be a component of this licensing agreement. And I just don't see that it's relevant. But now that you're here and you've put it in, I'm going to ask you about it. So what I would like to hear is an explanation from you as to why you don't believe you have to do something beyond flare. It's my understanding of state statute and Oregon administrative rule is that you can't just flare. So I'd love to hear more about that. It's, what I'm hearing is that you really are required to produce something valuable besides flaring it.
But we're not required to sell it to McMinnville Water and Light.
Okay.
Or I don't think we're required to convert it to energy either. That's, I'm confused by that part of your question.
Okay,
yeah,
it's just that there are comments in the record that suggest that you can't just burn it per state.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to speak to that fully here, but I think we can. I think it helps to understand that we have from the very beginning, we didn't build the plant without early conversations with McMinnville Water and Light. We went to them and said, would you be interested? This is a $10 million investment. We would want the renewable energy to be used locally, local power, local green energy. Are you interested? They said yes.
Okay, sounds good. So what I would request, Chair, is that we actually remove the section, I think section 6.7 or something, about the relationship between Riverbend Landfill and Mac Water and Light. I don't see it as pertinent to our licensing agreement. So that's my first request.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go ahead when it comes time to move on this. We can move. You can make a motion to include this or not include it in further discussions and for further movement. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I have a series of questions. So if you'll allow me, Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
So we're moving past the flaring or not flaring and the following of state statute or not. One kind of an overriding question, which I asked County Council, but I'd love to hear your response. And maybe Director Friday has his own thoughts on it, which is ultimately, what is the purpose, in your view, Mr. Brooks and Ms. Lang, of a licensing agreement that includes a payment to the county? What is the purpose and what does that payment reflect in your view?
In one word, to me, it's partnership. It is an affirmation from the company that we want to continue the relationship and our operations in Yamhill County. Tommy, do you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that's how it's structured. I think that question is equally appropriate back to the county because it's part of the solid waste ordinance and how things are structured to sort of bring people together to do kind of like an overall win-win for everyone. And I think that fits in with Jackie's idea of partnership. So it's a way for the parties to work together.
And then Director Friday.
Before you, one moment, Commissioner, I was just asking maybe Mr. Friday if you wanted to weigh in on that component of it in terms of the relationship between the county and Riverbend and why that is important if it goes beyond the partnership part of this.
No, I think that is well stated, that it lays out the expectations on both sides and it provides some funding for some things that we do with the solid waste department.
So if we didn't have this funding, we would be funding some of this in that department from discretionary?
Potentially, we'd have to take a look at it. There have been several years where, as Jackie had stated, that we received $1 million, and it wasn't that many years ago that we were receiving $1 million per year. So there is some money in the fund, but eventually, after several years, I would anticipate we would look at whether we would be reducing programs or taking money from the general fund.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so my next question is, is there a reason why we have the proposal in front of us now rather than waiting for DEQ and their decision-making process around the landfill? And this would be a question for Ms. Lang and Mr. Brooks, I suppose.
Tommy, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I think the timing of it is just a reality of the situation, and what we've been pretty consistent with describing to you guys is that the site is really constrained right now. We've had to change our operations at the site, and the license agreement isn't about the expansion. The license agreement is how best to use the space that we have that's permitted now, both available and that could be developed. So because of that change and the current site constraints, that's why we're moving now. And we realize that it seems abrupt to some others. It really shouldn't be viewed as abrupt, because we've talked about the site being constrained for a number of years, but it's also why we thought the county's idea, or Christian and Ken's idea, of sort of phasing in the drop of the license fee minimum is useful to make it less abrupt for you guys. But really, to your question, Commissioner Kula, it's about the site constraints now and how we're going to operate this site as it's currently permitted, not as it's expanded.
Wasn't there also the consideration of the renewal date, that there was some immediacy to that?
That was our initial, when we initially proposed it, we were trying to sync it up to the next license year. So that's, we're a month past that now, so it feels like that's not as urgent, but it actually is. I mean, the more we can tie it to a full license year and a fiscal year for the county, I think the better off we'll be.
Thank you. Commissioner Kula.
Thank you, Chair. So just as a follow-up, I actually wasn't referring to expansion, Mr. Brooks. I was referring to DEQ looking at whether you've actually triggered the 5-year closure. And if you're not familiar with it, you should probably talk to DEQ about that.
Waste Management talks to DEQ quite regularly, so just because I'm not familiar with your question, I don't know the reference to what you just said in your question. Sorry.
Okay, I think I talked to Ms. Lang about this, but maybe she knows.
Sure, I can clarify. We are not moving into closure. Riverbend is still opening, still operating. We have at least 8 to 10 years of capacity with the volumes that we were bringing in several weeks ago. We've since reduced those volumes and are prioritizing soils, contaminated soils and clean soils, and metering in some MSW, some household solid waste, or some municipal solid waste. We've not triggered the closure permit with DEQ, although we are in regular communication with regulators about the future.
Okay, so just as a follow-up, Chair, if I may, Ms. Lang, my understanding is that DEQ is actually looking at whether they can decide that you've triggered the 5-year closure. So I assume that you're aware of that conversation too. And so my question then is, in the context of that, why is there a rush on your part to extend the licensing agreement when we know we can just go to year right now?
So the conversations with DEQ about closure have not started, are not recent. These are on, we are near the end of the site. So 10 years ago, we went, or 12 years ago, we went to DEQ and said, we want to expand the site because capacity is constrained. There's been no surprise or complete transparency with the agency about our capacity constraints. We report to them regularly, and we fully understand the requirements related to closure, and we're looking at that with DEQ. There's nothing new happening there, and it doesn't connect to this discussion about the license agreement.
Well, in my opinion, it does, since I'm one of the people who votes on it from this side of things. So what I just want to acknowledge is that I hope that you're aware of the conversation at DEQ about whether or not your actions to close the landfill have triggered that 5-year closure. And so I'm assuming you know about them. I mean, they happened shortly after, those conversations happened shortly after your decision to close the landfill to the local fleets.
And I would tell you that we hosted 25 community meetings over the last 8 years in Yamhill County. Closure and the closure permit came up at every other meeting. So there's been a lot of discussion and different opinions about that regulatory requirement. It's not a new part of the conversation.
Then, just as a follow-up, if I may,
Yes.
Have you been in conversation with DEQ, or has DEQ approached you, or Mr. Brooks, or anybody at Waste Management since the closure to inform you that they're talking about whether you've triggered that closure?
We haven't closed, so Riverbend is continuing to operate, and we've had multiple conversations with different staff members of DEQ since we began the transition.
Okay, and do you feel like they're going to decide that you've triggered the 5-year regulatory closure process?
I don't speculate about what regulators are going to do. We understand the regulation, and we have not triggered the closure permit, and we're talking with DEQ about all of that.
Okay, thank you. So let's thank you. Commissioner Bershauer, did you have anything before we move off this topic?
I don't think so, Chair, at this time, maybe in a bit.
Okay, Commissioner Kula.
Yes, I just have a changing topics, but within the licensing agreement. When you were last in front of us, I asked about whether, as part of this, since you proposed this to us, we have the ability to propose back to you. And so what my request has been, but I understand that you don't want to do it, and so I'd love to find out why, is my proposal is that you continue to offer the landfill as an open facility for people driving up. And Mr. Brooks is nodding because he knows that's been a request of mine, as part of our negotiated licensing agreement. And I recognize that you've explained why you can't do that. I also know that you've had a recycling facility there. So, feel free to explain again if you can.
Thank you. I think all the commissioners have expressed some concern about being able to be open to the public. And that was one of the, hopefully staff conveyed that to Waste Management as far as this being a component of our concerns. So I don't know if Mr. Brooks, Ms. Lang wants to address that. We have heard the reason why. And but anyway, go ahead and maybe just reiterate that for us.
Chair Starrett, we heard that first from you, and you were very clear and articulate about it. We heard it from Commissioner Bershauer. Our intention all along has been to continue to serve the community, and that's why we initiated the expansion. This is not the outcome that we were looking for. Staff came back to us in the negotiation process and said that the chair and the commissioners want you to look at this again. Is there any way that you can continue to accept waste from the community? And we looked at it again, backwards and forwards. And I'm sorry, we've not been successful in creating that option. And I want to explain a bit about this. When you transition to accepting soils, the incoming waste comes in fits and starts, stops and starts. There'll be a project like when Mary Alice Russell came to us for the Sewell Buell Elementary work. There was contaminated soil there that needed to be removed. That project came to us all at once, and then we didn't have soils for months again. You know, when a construction project or some type of environmental remediation project comes and we can secure that business, that's when we get the soils. But it will not happen on a regular basis. So we need to take the soils in when we can confirm those volumes. And then over time, we'll have an opportunity to place in, to meter in some municipal solid waste. So there's no predictability with that. And the idea that we would open to the public to accept recycling and garbage intermittently, that's not a workable plan. We're not comfortable at all saying anything that might encourage somebody to keep waste in their home or on their property. And we can't provide any type of reliable timeline for when the solid waste can be placed at the landfill. So our internal plan is to just make to bring the MSW to the site when we have the space, from volumes that Waste Management already controls from the east side of the county or from the communities of Newberg or Dundee.
You know, I'd like to move us along and really focus in on the terms of the proposed agreement and look at what County Council has brought to us in terms of a revision here. And I see in 2B that the revision was from 20 to 15 years, and would like to address that term first. So let's go ahead and talk about that and move on through this and then try to make some headway, because we could sit and debate the landfill all day. It's been done for many, many years. So that's the plan. So Commissioner Kula, did you want to go ahead and address the item 2 in the revision?
Yes, and Chair, I actually want to go back to the question because I think that I deserve to at least have the privilege of a follow-up to the—
Absolutely. Go right ahead, Commissioner. Go right ahead.
Thank you. So as a follow-up, because I think that I didn't actually know, Chair, that you and Commissioner Berschauer also felt strongly about this, but what I wonder is whether there's a way, I know that you accept garbage, or you accepted garbage at a transfer station in Newberg. Like, I'm aware of that. As far as I understand, that's accurate. You brought in garbage, you put it in truck, you took it to Riverbend. I know you had recycling at the landfill as well. And I know that you have explained to us the logistical challenges, which to be honest, you've come to us, so that we're the ones with the negotiating advantage in this, in my view. But what I wonder is whether if you had your transfer station available, or had the Riverbend landfill available as a transfer station where people could bring their garbage, because you know how to do that. You do it in Newberg. And then when you have it available, you can send that garbage into the landfill. It seems like a perfectly reasonable compromise.
Yeah, let me take a first stab at that. A transfer station requires a different kind of permit from DEQ, which we currently don't have authorization for. I think, if we wanted to explore that sometime in the future and the county wanted to support the site design review of a transfer station, we would maybe welcome that discussion, but currently it doesn't fit the site. We cannot operate a transfer station at the site. So it seems intuitive and it seems obvious that it's kind of the same kind of activities, but DEQ doesn't look at it as the same kind of activities, and we can only do what we're permitted to do.
All right, so as a follow-up, your need would be to gain approval of a site design review.
A permit from DEQ, site design review. Yeah, a number of things would have to fall into place before we could actually operate a transfer station.
And okay, I do want to, no, I just want to make a note that I was, during the 22nd, I was very clear that I had concerns about the public not being able to use the site. So it's not any new revelation. I believe Commissioner Bershauer voiced the same concerns because that's what we were hearing from constituents who had those concerns. And that was uppermost in our minds, is how do we get to that? And we have been hearing over and over that it's just not, it's not possible based on the capacity at this time. So let's go ahead and, if we can, just go to item 2B. And we have a revision proposed to us that County Council and staff have worked on, and this is what is brought before us. So we're looking at approving this, and as I said, the material changes have to do with the term and the license fees payable to the county. So let's go ahead and look at that 15 years and begin discussion there. So Commissioner Bershauer, thoughts about the term revision?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, you wanted to continue the discussion on the length of term or the payments?
No, we'll start with item 2, which is the term of the agreement.
Okay.
And that revision that was brought to us contains a revision from 20 to 15 years.
So, I guess my thought is that, in my frustration, Commissioner Kula, is that I think that we collectively have a concern about access by the public to use these types of services, because a lot of people were depending on them as part of their household budget and their daily function. It's frustrating that those services are no longer available, but I also feel like I'm not really understanding where you're going, because I feel like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth when you say, I don't support expansion, which would have allowed that activity to happen or continue, but we still want it to continue. I feel like, we're telling a business, you have to proceed as normal, and yet we've sort of boxed them into a corner. So I'm not really clear on where, how that works, because that's not how a business works. We can't have it both ways, right? So, in terms of the length of time, I'm comfortable with 15 years in any business, and we've all owned them. Having predictability is key. And, whether you have 15 or 20 years, it just allows time to plan and to be purposeful about what you're doing, and to have that predictability that's so critical. So I don't have an issue with the term. We can talk a little bit more about the other components that I've already brought up, but at this point, I'm okay with the term.
Commissioner Kula, term.
Thank you, Chair. And to respond to Commissioner Bershauer's comments,
Yes.
I would be happy to talk about expansion and why it is a bad idea, but I think that Commissioner Stara has made it really clear this is not the conversation. But if it is, let's do it, and let's plan to talk about it more. My understanding that was the Oregon Court of Appeals doesn't have anything pending before them about an expansion. So it's actually, unless the question comes before us as a new application, then we can probably leave it for now. But in terms of the term, I have no problem with the term staying as the current contract or the current agreement has, which is a year to year.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on, and the next significant change would be, I believe, where are we? We made some changes in the latter part C of item 2, and that removes that and removes a couple of those other components, and C is one of them. Now, moving on to the license fees payable to the county, we're looking at a significant change from what Waste Management offered, which was $50,000, which was a far cry from what we have been getting in terms of our fees. and did come back with something significant. And I'm happy to see, because the $50,000 was pretty much a non-starter for me. There's a big jump in us having to backfill to support, as Mr. Friday mentioned, some of the programs that have become dependent on these license fees. So the material changes here are in section I of 4.2, which talks about the 1 year, the minimum annual license fee being $200,000, then goes on to the second year of the term down to $150,000. It goes down in $50,000 increments for the third year, and the fourth year goes down to $50,000. The minimum annual license fee, as presented in section 4.4, goes years 1 through 4, but the annual adjustment will apply to the 4-year minimum. So what we're looking at here is a difference of the $50,000 a year going forward, and the way it's stated from 2,000 to 150 to 100 to 50. So discussions on the license fees. Commissioner Kula, thoughts?
Whoops, I hit the wrong button. Sorry, Chair. You'd think I would know how to do this by now. I think that as long as Riverbend Landfill is accepting garbage and soils, they should be paying the existing base fee. And I think I want to go back to, but I, as part of that, so that's my position right now. I recognize that there's been some movement towards that. But what I think it's important to remember that the fees that Riverbend is charging us, presumably they're adding that fee in as a cost of doing business. So regardless of where the money is coming from, people in the community are paying it. Whether it's part of our budget comes from somewhere else, or whether we're getting it from Riverbend. People in the community are either paying it as part of disposal fees or as part of their taxes. I just want to acknowledge that, and Commissioner Sterrett is really good to remind us of when there are fees that come to the county that they come from people. So I just want to acknowledge that, but I also think that as long as Riverbend is accepting garbage, and especially if they're not accepting garbage from people in Yamhill County, essentially we're closed to Yamhill County residents, that they should be paying that $240,000 a year.
Thank you. And Ms. Lang, did you want to address the fact that people are paying this, but in terms of, I'm just looking at if you're not running at the capacity and you've reduced your employees down to, what do you have, 5 now from 25?
Mhm.
So you're not running the business at full capacity. So you're not bringing in terms of receivables and money wise, you're not bringing in that amount of money, which was justifying the license fee per year. If that's changed, then I think this whole thing is predicated on a business model which is not operating at full capacity, so not bringing in that full amount of money, and therefore that's why the revision is being requested. So you're not able to run at full capacity, and so you're asking for us to acknowledge that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, Chair Sterrett.
Okay. All right. So Commissioner.
Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Kula, we want to move along. So we
Yeah,
don't
I
want to
recognize
debate
that.
the landfill. That's not what this is
We
about.
are not debating the landfill, but if we're going to talk about what people are choosing or choosing not to do, or being required to do, Riverbend Landfill closed on its own. They chose. Nobody closed the landfill except for Waste Management or whoever is making these decisions. So please, going forward, you made the choice.
Jackie, did you want to respond?
I do feel that I need to respond. Riverbend is not closed. Riverbend continues to operate. We initiated an expansion more than a decade ago because of capacity constraints. And when we've not been able to secure the expansion, and that has resulted in a dramatic change in our operations. So new limitations are now in place that make it impossible for us to do what we want to do, which is provide services in the county and for county residents and businesses. So it's, in many respects, it's out of our hands now, even though we've been working very hard for more than a decade to continue to operate.
I'm happy to go on, Chair, to the next component of it, but choosing is, I think, the important.
Okay, all right, let's move on. So we're looking at item 4, which has to do the license fees payable. Commissioner Bershauer, again, there's been a significant movement in the proposal that County Council worked with them on, Waste Management on. Thoughts?
Thank you, Chair. I do like the phased-in approach. I think that is definitely a better starting point for me, at least. It also would give the county some time to adjust based on our yearly budgeting. So, yeah, I don't think I would offer any revisions to it at this point. I mean, we're talking basically, you know, a 5-year phase-in, which is a good chunk of the overall contract. So I'm fine with that. But I do want to just say something in response to Commissioner Kula. I think that the folks that opposed the expansion very transparently had the purpose of shutting the landfill down and shutting this facility down. I don't think that's in doubt in anyone's mind. So some of the feedback that has come to the BOC is sort of this shock and awe that, what do you mean? Riverbend's not closed. It's what we expected to happen. So I think there's another side of this story that's not being told. And I want to let Riverbend know that we have been receiving a lot of testimony on this, but a lot of it is generated from the conversations that have happened in the past several years.
So Mr. Friday, do you want to weigh in? Because we're talking about what the impact to the county would be and on some of the programs that we had. And those programs really do depend on this. So we were looking at that $50,000 proposal and saying, wow, this is really going to impact us. Where do we make up the difference? Do you want to comment on what's been proposed in terms of a negotiation here?
Well, we went to Riverbend and said, we'd like this to not be such a steep dive off of a cliff, but instead would be more of a slope, and it would provide a slower phase in of the lower license fee. And instead of going from 271,000 is what we got last year to 50,000, it would, as you have noted, would go from 270 to 200, then 150, then 100. And I really appreciate Riverbend and Waste Management negotiating with us. It's $300,000 more than what the first proposal was. And the household hazardous waste collection events run about $100,000 to $150,000 a year, depending on how many of them we have. We have $25,000 set aside for roadside garbage pickup. Last year, we only used $6,000 of that, but this year I anticipate we're going to use more because we just yesterday I had our code enforcement person come to me with having to pick up 2 RVs, and those are expensive. And so I anticipate our costs are going to be significant in that category. So those are the types of things and programs that this money helps to pay for.
Thank you. Ms. Lang, a question. Bottom line, if the landfill begins the closure process and starts to close down, how much does the county get? What would those fees to the county be on an annual basis? If you began that process, so if we were to start, let's say we start here with the 200,000, 150, 100, and then 50. If you were to begin the closure process, go ahead. Kristen, did you want to?
Sorry, sorry about that. I think I can pretty quickly address that. If Riverbend stops accepting municipal solid waste, then the license agreement automatically terminates. So then there wouldn't be any minimum fees.
So no revenue to the county at all. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead, and since we're being asked to approve this amended license agreement. Commissioner Bershauer.
Sorry, Chair, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought there. And I keep referring to Riverbend when I mean to refer to waste management, so I apologize. I want to clarify, though, that this is the base, right? And we're still talking about if soils are brought in or trash is metered in and you exceed whatever the capacity is, that number could and should and will go up.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. It is
Thank
the
you,
floor.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula.
As a follow-up to that, remind me, when you bring in soils, including contaminated soils, do you pay that that tonnage fee?
We do if it gets disposed of, and that's one of the differences with the operational. It used to be that those soils were used only for beneficial uses, but now that the operations have changed and that's really the only waste that can be disposed of in some of these areas, that would be disposed. It wouldn't be beneficially used. So it depends on how it's characterized in terms of disposal.
Okay, great. So sorry, Ms. Lang, did you want to add anything? I just wanted to follow up then. Okay, thank you. Mr. Brooks, then, so there is the possibility that we could change the language so that anything that comes in counts as towards that tonnage.
In terms of the beneficial use language?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying not to disrupt that part of the existing license agreement because of the incentive for using waste that would already be disposed of for beneficial uses instead of bringing in non-waste to serve those purposes. So I think it's the right incentive here to have for waste management to, and use the stuff that's already come into the site for those purposes instead of bringing other materials to avoid any kind of fee.
Thank you. So I know Commissioner Cooley, you had suggested that that item 6, section 6 be removed. Did you want to make a motion to approve this with the removal of that or with any other revisions that you wanted to see? Because right now I'm going to look for a motion.
Oh, sure, Chair. Let me pull it up though, so that I can make a motion that's. So again, I'm not going to be able to see you because I'm looking at the document. Let's see, then I would move that we approve the amendment to the second amended and restated solid waste disposal license agreement, striking out the 15 years in 2B and changing it to 1 year, changing number 4 to $240,000 as the minimum annual license fee for all following years, and then striking out section 6.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Bershauer.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I thought you were going to make a motion about number 6 only. So I feel like my instinct is to go the other way and actually strengthen that piece, because if we're talking about protecting the public's interest, there's 2 components to that. One was the recycling garbage program. The other is the renewable energy and affordable power. So for me, I feel like it's not quite strong enough. I would almost strengthen that and certainly not remove it. So and the other 2 I oppose.
All right, so we have a motion. We've had some discussion. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of Commissioner Kula's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Aye. Okay, the motion fails. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the second amendment and restated solid waste disposal license agreement, including the revisions that County Council and Waste Management worked on, which have to do with the effective term and with the license fees as revised, and including item 6, because I think it's important. It is a component of, it's a significant component of the arrangement with Mac Water and Light. And so that is my motion at this time. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Kula.
Yes, and Chair, I just want, for the viewing public, because many people have not actually looked at this, just want to acknowledge that there's nothing in number 6 that's a legally binding thing, and that's because we don't have any relationship that could legally bind Riverbend Landfill with Mac Water and Light. And I just want to note that I have no idea about the beneficial relationship between Mac Water and Light and Riverbend Landfill. I've not had that shared with me in any way, so we're just going on what Riverbend has to say about it and what Commissioner Bershauer has told us. But with that those caveats, this is basically the same thing as the resolution number 6.
Thank you. Commissioner Bershauer.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner Kula, I acknowledge that. I don't think we have an ability to dictate what that contract looks like. I'm assuming, though, that Mr. Brooks and Mrs. Lang are telling us the truth when they have another 10 years in the contract. A contract is a contract. So, and I have heard from numerous customers of Mac Water and Light that they do love and appreciate the fact that they have some of the most affordable energy in the entire county. So it seems like it's mutually beneficial. I don't know why it would change. You know, and my concern is that it continue as long as possible. 10 years is 10 years. Obviously, this extends 5 years beyond that, but I would hope that it would continue beyond 10 years. And it doesn't sound, I haven't heard anything that would lead me to believe that it won't. I just wanted to make the point that all three of us have expressed an emphasis on how does this affect the public. We want to protect the public's interest. So for me, that's part of, this is a significant part of this amendment.
As a customer of PGE, I can tell you that I envy the rates that customers of Mac Water and Light have, because it's significant difference. So we have a motion on.
I just want to note that as far as I understand, it's primarily because Mac Water and Light buys their power directly from Bonneville Power Administration through the large volume that goes to the steel mill. I just want to, that's based upon my understanding of the situation.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table. All those in favor of accepting the second amended and restated solid waste disposal license agreement as revised, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners. So Kristen, did you want to add anything to this in terms of, and maybe Mr. Friday, in terms of going forward, what next steps would be? Is this just now going to be considered an approved contract? An agreement, rather?
Yep, that's correct. It's an amendment to an existing contract, which we do regularly. So the next step would simply be to sign and move forward.
Okay, Mr. Friday, any thoughts?
And this is retroactive to July 1. I guess I would add that. So we can work with Riverbend on what the minimum fee will be effective July 1 for the next fiscal year.
Thank you.
That fee structure.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for the discussion. And Ms. Lang, Mr. Brooks, appreciate that. And Mr. Friday, appreciate you being with us for this. We know that you're not done with us because we're going to see you in a few minutes. So thank you. Oh, and Ms. Lang, yes, go ahead.
Chair Starrett, thank you. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Thank you, Commissioner Bershauer and Commissioner Kula. One thing we've learned in the last several weeks as we've been talking with you about this licensing agreement, and Commissioner Bershauer mentioned the comments and questions that have come in from the community. Some of those have focused on compliance, and the takeaway for my team on this is that we need to do a better job communicating with Ken Friday and with you about compliance issues. What the regulations are, the monitoring process, what happens when something unexpected arises, and how waste management investigates that, the role of the agencies to investigate. So one takeaway, very different than the licensing agreement, is that we need to do a better job on that. And I'll be following up with Ken to make sure that we do that.
Thank you very much.
That sounds
Appreciate
good.
that.
Thank you to both of you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So
Thank
we'll
you.
go ahead and move on to item I, which is other business add-ons and non-consent items. And item I1 is the consideration of approval of an internal control policy for investments as presented by the county treasurer and recommended by the Yamhill County Investment Committee. And we've all had a look at that. And are there any thoughts about that? And can we have a motion to approve that policy?
Chair, I move that we approve item I1.
Okay, we have, go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
hanging on a comment there. I'm not going to go into all the details, but basically there was significant concern when Treasurer Bledsoe came into office that there wasn't a whole lot of internal control going on and that things weren't very well spelled out. So she's done a lot of work into putting this together and making sure that the internal parameters are very clear. So I appreciate that work.
Yes, and we do as well. So we have a motion to approve the policy. Further discussion?
The only thing I wanted to add is I second that, since I don't know anything compared to the investment committee members. It's been really good to listen and to see that there are controls in place so that we really wisely invest the money that's we have on hand.
Absolutely. So, all right. So all those in favor of approving the policy signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. On to item I2, consideration to accept a quote and authorizing A&R tree service to trim branches on Bethel Road and Eola Hills Road in the amount of $26,475. Commissioner Kula?
Thank you, Chair. You'll have a memo. It's been increasingly important, especially with safety on our rural roads. And as our Public Works Department gets caught up, we saw during the ice storm the importance of having those both power lines and roadways as safe as possible. So this is more, this is catching up. And I was talking to Senator Wyden's office yesterday about the cost of the infrastructure package. And he said, this is what happens when we don't keep up. And I think that this is a really good example of we need to get caught up.
Absolutely. And especially with wildfires and first responders needing to access these roads, sometimes it can be pretty dicey. So
yeah, and I might add that we have some roads, and this is really the important thing is that maintaining those. We're getting back those sight lines, and we had a traffic fatality on a state highway near an intersection. I think Highway 240, and
yeah.
some of those intersections need to be addressed, and so Public Works is working on that.
Absolutely. So did you want to make that motion?
I move that we approve this contract for brush clearing services.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item I2. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. On to item I3, consideration to accept a quote and purchase from Structured for Mitel maintenance of ShoreTel licensing and support for the 2021-22 fiscal year in the amount of $36,925.06. And I don't know if there's any, Ken, did you want to add anything to this, or is this basically just the
This is our annual renewal for the maintenance and licensing of our phone system.
okay? And so motion to approve.
I move that we approve item I3.
We have a motion to approve. Further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion I3 passes. On to item I4, which is consideration and selection of a Yamhill County private sector representative to be appointed to the Mid-Willamette Valley Area Commission on Transportation Committee, MWACT, appointment to be vacated to a vacated position and will serve out the remainder of the term through December 30th, 2021. And Commissioner Primizic had resigned from his position, and that left an opening, which brings us up to, would need to be filled through December 30th. So we've had 3 applicants. We have former Commissioner Olson, we have Philip Higgins, and Tom Hammer. So commissioners, discussion.
Well, Chair, I would say that given that former Commissioner Olson was the our liaison to MWACT, I think it would be great to allow him to plug back in. And I think that I particularly would like that because it's an alphabet soup of agencies, and he is much more familiar even with me than me with this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bershauer.
Oops, I got my mute thing. Thank you, Chair. I think they're all very well qualified and great applicants, and they all have different kind of histories in the county with these issues. At this time, I would like to make a motion to approve or appoint Tom Hammer to MWACT.
Thank you. Looking at everybody has great qualifications, and I think Commissioner Olson was certainly rose to the top, but I was running this by a couple of commissioners in neighboring counties asking what's the best fit for this, and saying that we did have a former commissioner who actually in our last discussion, this was a great suggestion of former Commissioner Olson. And he pointed out something which I hadn't thought about. He said, you know, this is for a private sector representative. We have a lot of people from government agencies and with ties to counties and elected representatives, that you're looking for someone who really represents outside those systems. So that is why I think it was kind of a toss-up for me. But I'm looking at the private sector component as being significant here, and that's the role and the position that needs to be filled. So okay, so we have a recommendation from Commissioner Kula, and then we have a recommendation from Commissioner Bershauer. So we're looking for a motion now.
And Chair, I believe that Commissioner Bershauer has a motion.
She does have a motion.
Put on the floor. But I think that it's reasonable to focus on a truly private sector. I now recall that I think it was Ken Wright who actually had that, and then we appointed former Commissioner Primizich to that one. So I understand what you're talking about, and so it was good. It's good to hear from the other folks.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so Christian, did you want to weigh in, or we do have a motion?
Thank you, Chair,
for
making that distinction. I guess I was thinking about former Commissioner Olson as being now back into the private sector, so it wasn't part of my lens, but I appreciate that perspective, especially from our fellow commissioners in Polk County. So thank you.
Yes.
One thing I would add, sorry, we're in further discussion, right, Chair?
Yes.
Okay, I do have a funny thing in that Mr. Hammer and I live within a couple of miles of each other, and so for me the hesitation with appointing him is just that we, like it or not, we know the areas that we know best, and we're both in the far southeast corner of Yamhill County. And so when we think about this regional transportation body, I think it would be good for us to have also some geographic representation rather than just me and Mr. Hammer, which I believe was the motion from Commissioner Bershauer. But it's also, we can always switch around liaison roles too, if that's necessary.
Thank you. And I remember when Mr. Wright was on NWAC and as the private sector a representative. So it's sort of, I don't know, that's what comes to mind, because that's when I first came in, and that was who was occupying the position. So, all right, we have a motion. Commissioner Bershauer, do you want to restate your motion?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. I move that we appoint Tom Hammer to be the Yamhill County Private Sector Representative on the Mid-Willamette Valley Area Commission on Transportation Committee, MWACT.
We have a motion to approve Mr. Tom Hammer. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes. On to item I5, consideration of authorizing intent to award the Ed Grenfeld Park restroom project to Jeff Carter Construction in the amount of $143,195.20. And Mr. Huffer, you probably have some long history with this project and in a former capacity as far as how long some of these projects have been in the hopper.
I do, but I've been away from it long enough that I wouldn't, it's been some time. I know our parks manager, Ben Much, has, you know, in the short time that he's been with us, he's really trying to implement a number of projects, and this being one of it, and one of those projects. And so he went through the procurement process, and he has the recommendation here as far as lowest bidder with this construction company. So again, it's a notice of intent to award, the first step that he's prepared. And so if approved, the next step would be is finalizing a contract, and then that would come back before the board as well to finalize, so we can, so then Ben can start the work on this project at Grenfell Park.
Great, and the specifics of the project are in the packet, so pretty extensive. And so, okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve. Pardon me, Commissioner Bershauer, do you want to do this? You're the Parks liaison.
Sure. And I'll just say the Parks Committee is very excited about this too. So I move that we approve the notice of intent to award the Ed Grenfell Park restroom project to Jeff Carter Construction in the amount of $143,195.20.
Motion to approve. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. On to item I6, consideration of approval of a budget proposal for the Emergency Management Performance Grant, the EMPG, through the Oregon Office of Emergency Management for fiscal year 2021-22 in the amount of $100,572. So just as a recap, that we're using this for personnel costs. We're going ahead and using it. It's a 50% match grant. So this is something that comes before the board every year, and you'll see the allocations, and they list the two emergency manager and the emergency manager tech specialist. So, and we also want to send out some kudos to Sergeant Young, dealing with some issues, a Yamhill water situation that he was able to jump in on, and also really with what's at the forefront with what emergency management is dealing with these days. And also Carol Harland. These folks are always much appreciated, and we don't always get to say that. So I would like to make the motion to approve the approval of the budget proposal for the AMPG grant.
And Chair, as a further discussion, I'd say hallelujah. I really feel like Emergency Manager Young in the past year has stepped up in innumerable ways, and Carol, and I'm forever grateful for both of their work.
Yeah. All right. So we have a motion to approve item number I6. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. On to item I7, consideration to authorize the Community Justice Department to submit a letter of support for the Justice Reinvestment Program grant for the 2021-23 biennium. And this is a letter that Mr. Huffer.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, for the sake of, it was something that I didn't catch before, just for clarification for the record. This isn't necessarily authorizing community justice in submitting a letter. This is actually the board submitting a letter of support on what's being proposed. It's just language that I think it's important for the record to clarify. This isn't authorizing Jessica to submit a letter. This letter will be signed and will be coming from the Board of Commissioners if approved.
Right, and the letter has been drafted. Thank you, Carolina. And so it's ready to go. So yes, thank you for that clarification. It's to authorize the board's letter, submitting this letter of support. All those in, Commissioner Bershauer?
Sorry, Chair, is there a motion?
Why don't you go ahead and make that motion?
I move that we approve item I7, and I just wanted to say that we had several meetings yesterday about this, and there was a ton of time and effort put into this particular application, grant application. So thank you to the community justice team. They're very excited about it, and yeah, I move approval of item I7.
All right, motion to approve. Further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And so I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break because we're going to come back to a public hearing and give everybody a chance to take a real quick break. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Looks like everybody is back, so we'll go ahead and resume the Hill County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for August 12th, 2021 at the point of item J, which is a public hearing. We'll open up the public hearing, and this is on docket PAZ-02-21, which is a consideration of a request by Beartooth Land Group LLC and Wayne Beebe for a comprehensive plan and a zone change approval to rezone the property at 17810 Southeast Wallace Road, Dayton, from VLDR 2.5 to light industrial. The purpose is to allow expansion of the existing Oregon Trust manufacturing business. And we will go ahead and call for any abstentions by members of the board. We have none?
None.
I'm not going to ask you, Commissioner Kula.
Chair, I was going to wait until the next time the site visits an ex parte, but I can't imagine it ever being a potential conflict of interest, but I do want to note that this is very close in rural terms to our farm. I don't see it ever becoming a potential conflict of interest because they're doing something very different than farming.
Okay, and you did not sell any rutabagas to the parties?
Well, actually, thank you for that. Let's see, I'm going to declare a potential conflict of interest because they are the best truss manufacturer that I know. And so I always buy my trusses from them for farm projects. So I do want to declare a potential conflict for that.
Well, that was like a commercial. That just like value added. That was like a nice commercial for Beartooth Land Group LLC.
Well, I will say, Chair, that regardless of a potential conflict of interest, I am willing and prepared to come into this with no bias at all, looking at the evidence in front of us as it applies to the rules.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for that follow-up, Commissioner.
You wanted that.
So I also want to say thank you to our to County Council, Senior Assistant County Council Todd Sadlow for joining us, and for Ken Friday and for Lance, who's joining us to give us sort of the update here. And we'll go ahead. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the board to hear the matter before it? Okay, we don't have any. Any board member need to state on the record substance of any ex parte contact or site visits, Commissioner Kula?
I have been to the site in the past.
Okay, all right. And let's go ahead and who is that? Is Ken going to read that, or is Ken's going to read that? Okay, go ahead and read these statements required by state law.
Oregon law requires that persons who attend a land use hearing be advised of certain rights and duties before the hearing begins. First, with regard to the standards for approval, state law ORS 197.763 sub 5 requires that we list the applicable substantive criteria that must be met in order for the county to approve the application. The standards will be listed by the county planner in a moment as part of the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the standards for approval. Second, the raise it or waive it rule. Under Oregon law, any issue that might be raised in an appeal of the county's decision in this matter must be raised before the record of this hearing is closed. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board based on that issue. Third, and this is directed to the applicant, under ORS 197.796, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval, again with sufficient specificity to allow the county to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to a staff report. We have Lance Woods, Associate Planner, joining us. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. The subject parcel is located in the very low density residential zone, the VLDR zone at 2.5. The property was found to be a committed exception to Goal 3, the agricultural goal, and Goal 4, the forestry goal, adopted by exception statement number 2 on April 23rd, 1980, and was plan designated VLDR, very low density residential. The exception area is not within an unincorporated community, as that term is defined by OAR 660-022. The There is a single-family dwelling, garage, and accessory building, which appears to be used for personal household storage located on the property. The applicant states that these structures will remain on the property along with the septic system and well if the plan amendment and zone change requests are approved. The application indicates that the home will be used as a business office and as a caretaker's residence as needed. The westernmost half of the property is open field with a few trees, and the application states that a majority of this area will be used to store manufacturing materials used in conjunction with the Oregon Trust business located on the adjacent tract to the south of the subject parcel. There are 3 parcels to the south of the subject property that are zoned for light industrial use. The applicant owns all 3 of these properties, and they are used in conjunction with the business operated on site, Oregon Trust, which manufactures trusses. Directly to the east of the subject property are 3 parcels zoned for very low density residential use, also in the VLDR-2.5 zone, and appear to support rural residential uses. Land to the west, north, northwest, northeast, and southeast of the subject property are zoned for exclusive farm use, the EF80 zone. Farm uses on these lots consist of a mix of fruit or nut orchards, grass seed and hay production, nursery stock, cultivation, row crops, and livestock pasturage. To the north and northwest of the subject parcel is a tract which is split zoned exclusive farm use EF80 and public airports landing fields district to the PALF zone. Although a review of the aerial imagery indicates that this area of the tract is currently under farm use and there does not appear to be any improvements currently in place to support use as a public airport or landing field. Approximately 800 feet south of the subject parcel is the junction of Southeast Grand Island Loop and Southeast Wallace Road. And there are 3 lots which are zoned for neighborhood commercial use. One of the businesses located in this zone is Grand Island Grocery and Deli, which has 2 property lines in common with the applicant's tract. There are 2 properties in the surrounding area that are zoned public work and safety, the PWS zone. One is a small lot measuring approximately 0.1 acres, which is used to store and support telecommunications services. The second PWS zoned lot is located adjacent to the applicant's southwesternmost property line. And this is under the ownership of Portland General Electric and appears to be used to support the electrical grid in this area. Also on July 1st, 2021, the Planning Commission unanimously voted to recommend approval of this proposed plan amendment and zone change. The review criteria for this application are sections 502, 702, and 1208.02 of the Yamhill County zoning ordinance. Section 904, the limited use overlay may also be applied. Comprehensive plan policies may be applicable, as well as OAR 660-12-0060, the transportation planning rule. And that concludes the staff report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Lance. Appreciate that. We will move on to the applicant's case. And I believe we have joining us the applicant and property owner, Wayne Beebe. And please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name right. And we have Alan Sorum, who's the applicant's attorney. So let's go ahead and start with the applicant's case. And thank you, Mr. Sorum, for joining us.
Thank you, Commissioners Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to go ahead and give a very brief presentation today. As Planner Woods indicated, this application has been before the county. It's gone through staff review process, recommendations. We had hearing before the Planning Commission where the matter was evaluated, and there was a unanimous recommendation for approval. I can kind of briefly summarize some of the things that we discussed before Planning Commission, just to give a little bit of a foundation for those watching at home. You know, what were the interesting facts of this case? It kind of came down to a couple things that staff identified that they would like us to respond, and we ultimately did. One was just explaining how we came to the conclusion that this is really the best choice for the applicant, that being an incremental expansion as opposed to relocating the property to a different site that might already be zoned industrial throughout the county. So we did an alternative land study, which that includes kind of evaluating all properties available for lease or acquisition of a similar size. We did that, and we provided copies of all of the listings for such sites. There really were no industrial zoned properties available in the county, except for a project in McMinnville that did have enough land. I believe it's called Rivergate, if I'm remembering correctly. The concerns with that site would be, first and foremost, it's designed to be a much larger project, and the price point for that site reflects it, with the listing price of over $7 million. The second thing is that it would require traffic being funneled through residential neighborhoods within McMinnville, creating more impacts with adjoining property owners than what we presently have, being immediately located on Wallace Road, in the state highway system. And third, it would kind of create a hardship for the employees of the company who have. This is a company that's been on site since 1991. And so, having been there for 30 years and relocating a significant distance, it would create a hardship for the employees. So for all of those reasons, it would be very impractical and not feasible at all to try and attempt to relocate. And the last thing is also that, what would be the repercussions of that then you would be moving all of the jobs and the activity at the Grand Island facility, and the potential impact on the surrounding grocery and deli and that rural community in that area by not having that level of activity there, which is kind of grown and has been part of the county's original planning from beginning in the exception process in 1981. So that was one matter. The second was we responded to staff's questions and engaged traffic engineering company DKS and Associates. Dr. Lacey Brown provided for us what's commonly called a transportation planning rule report. So when we're evaluating traffic impacts, when we're doing zone changes, we compare the worst case scenario under the current zoning versus the worst case scenario of traffic under the new proposed zone. And we try to identify how much additional traffic would, if any, would occur when you change zones, because we're not proposing any specific development. We're talking about hypotheticals. What is maximum traffic allowed? And this is only a 2-acre site, so not surprising, the change was very small. It was only 19 trips per day was seen as the potential increase in zoning with allowed uses under the rural industrial versus the current very low density residential, and that being well below the standards of ODOT as to what would be a significant effect. No functional classification of Wallace Road or any of the affected intersections would change. It's not going to have any impact on that. So by shoring up some of those evidentiary questions, we were able to answer the concerns of staff, and Planning Commission approved. There was no opposition. There continues to be no comments or opposition. And we asked the county commissioners to support the recommendation from the Planning Commission and approve the requested zone change.
Thank you, Mr. Sorum. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Sorum?
Chair, I don't have any questions. It was presented well, I believe.
Thank you. Commissioner Bershauer?
None for me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, so then we'll hear testimony in support of the application. Mr. Warren Stone joining us. Here we go.
Chair, I'm not sure if others on the team have comments. Oh,
hello.
Here we go.
Sorry
Here
about that.
He is. Hello, Mr. Stone.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't intending to speak, but I'm the general manager here at Oregon Trust. And Casey, thank you for the kind words. I hope your trusts are working out on your agricultural application. We feel this is in the best interest of our expansion and won't impact any of our neighbors. And we appreciate the work that Alan's done on our behalf, and I don't really have a whole lot to say. Like you said, sorry.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, any questions for Mr. Stone? None? Okay, so we can go ahead and move on to any opposition. Is there any opposition to the application? Lance, doesn't look like we have anybody scheduled.
That's correct. We had no opposition during the planning commission process, and we received no comments in opposition during the comment period.
Okay, and so do we have public agency reports?
Yes, Madam Chair. We received one public agency report from the county sanitarian who stated that future development must meet the sanitation requirements. And that concludes public agency reports.
Okay, so do we need to, is there any, Todd, any specific requirements to leave the record open, or is this just at this point, we don't have to consider that?
You do not.
Okay, all right, so then we'll move on to staff recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff recommends approval of the zone change and comprehensive plan amendment with the limited use overlay noted in the staff report.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and close the hearing and begin deliberation. Commissioners, thoughts? I'll start with you, Commissioner Kula.
Thank you, Chair. The last comment that Lance made was really the question I had is this going to be limited to just truss manufacturing and associated caretaker residents? Being familiar with the area, we have a former Apple storage facility turned into a chemical plant or a chemical storage place immediately adjacent to a home, immediately adjacent to a large truss manufacturing facility. Plus, as we heard, lots of utility facilities. I think that they've made their case for why they should have a zone change to light industrial with the situation around them and the lack of available properties elsewhere within the light industrial zone.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Commissioner Bershauer.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree. I think that it makes more sense for them to expand here than face the possibility of moving. So,
all right. So do we have a motion to approve item J1?
I move that we approve item J1, Chair.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item J1, which is docket PAZ-02-21, consideration of request by Beartooth Land Group LLC for comprehensive plan and zone change approval to rezone 17810 Southeast Wallace Road, Dayton from VLDR 2.5 to light industrial. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. And well, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to the next.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I will have, Madam Chair, I will have the ordinance and findings for approval, the written findings available for adoption on August 26th, 2 weeks from now.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sadlow. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to announcements. Commissioners, announcements.
Well, Chair, I have a reminder that you all are welcome to the Monday, August 23rd Water Task Force meeting, and for the public, folks are welcome as well. There will be a link on the website, on the meetings website as well, and that'll be a great overview of groundwater in all of its forms. We may even touch on Chehalem and Parrot Mountain groundwater limited areas, but we'll also hear from Fritz Graham from Senator Wyden's office about what the newly Senate passed infrastructure bill has in it that might be helpful to municipal water systems.
Thank you.
So that'll be afterwards.
Thank you. Good to know. And I've been in touch with Sergeant Young, and as you know, he was at the City of Yamhill meeting regarding their situation, pretty much a crisis situation in terms of limiting water, and maybe having further discussions about ARPA funds and the immediacy of their need there. So we're going to be touching base. I know Commissioner Cooley, you've been working on this as well. So appreciate that. And also, is there anything else?
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay, I want to say that I attended a meeting last night of the Newberg Urban Area Management Commission agenda, which hasn't met in 12 years. Now, this is definitely not one of those groups that has way too many meetings. This was a group that was commissioned back in 1979, approved by the county and by the city. And it's really to form that cooperation between the city and the county regarding urban growth boundaries and the like. So we did begin to get everybody back online, and we have Kit Johnston joining us at the meeting and a variety of other folks, and Alan Halstead. So we are going to be meeting on a regular basis, and we'll be working on all the issues that are now definitely before the city of Newberg. The other thing I wanted to point out is that Housing Authority is really wanting to ramp up their 200 unit Stratus project in McMinnville as far as getting the funding shored up for affordable housing. It will help the employees at the hospital. It'll be a great transition for folks coming out of Project Turnkey. And so we're going to be having further discussions of how the county can help. So I'm just kind of putting in a plug for that. And also we did have discussions. I met with Vicki and some other folks to talk about how the county's model for using foreclosed properties can be something that other county commissioners can look at to take some of these foreclosed properties and use them for public benefit. And we've seen what the Housing Authority has done with some of these houses, and it's amazing. So good work being done there. And that's all I have. Commissioner Bershauer.
Thank you, Chair. The Fair Board met last night, and we've talked about this a little briefly, but it was a record fair. In fact, it was the highest grossing fair that they've ever had. From the auction, which I think brought in close to $450,000, to the ticket sales were record breaking, the food and drinks, and I mean the lemonade stand, it was all of it across the board, just through the roof. So very excited team, and they're already looking at ways to capitalize on that for next year. So very proud of them. And then yesterday I was told that we have a Great Dane puppy coming to visit us next week. So if you're in the office, I think Deb Bridges has a new puppy, and she said she'd be bringing her Great Dane by. So very excited about that too. I love dogs. So. Oh, you're muted.
When Deb Bridges brings a puppy over, it's always in quotes because those Great Dane puppies are the size of a small horse, and they're not puppies. They're just these giant but cute as can be. So yeah, she disappointed. She was supposed to bring that puppy in last week. So hopefully we get to see him while he still has puppy breath. That's always my criteria for seeing a puppy. So anything else? Anybody else have anything for the good of the order?
Chair, I just wanted to mention that I really appreciate your work with the Housing Authority, especially on this larger scale project, because as you know, the most challenging thing with the successful Project Turnkey and the motel sheltering project is then finding places for people to move to. So thank you.
Yeah, no, they're doing an excellent job. I'm very excited to be working with Vicki and the whole crew over there. They do a great job. So anybody else? Kristen, did you have any updates for us? All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn today's meeting. Commissioner Kula, did you want to say something?
Only an irrelevant comment about how our new assistant county counsel is apparently also a soccer fan.
Is he really? Is he on the call, Colton?
He was. I was going to go ahead and introduce him. I wasn't sure if commissioners were going to be here today or remote, so I will introduce him in person to those that are here today. I think Chair Sterrett, you've already stopped by and said hello. Yeah, Colton Totland. I see him here. See if his newly installed IT.
I found a way to join as a panelist. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
There he is.
Oh, there good morning, commissioners. Yeah, I am a soccer fan. And I saw that Christian has on his wall a calendar of the Bundesliga. So I don't know what team he supports yet, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I've shared that with the board in the past, and you'll all be happy to know that just last week I received my new magazine with the new schedule and information for the upcoming season. So I'll be updating my posters in my office. So you're always welcome to stop by and take a look at that. So anyway, I just want to welcome Colton. We're excited to have him here. He was flexible enough in his schedule to start today and tomorrow, and then he's be on his honeymoon next week, and then he'll be back in the office starting again on Monday the 23rd. So we're excited to have him here and thrilled that he's joined the county.
Yes, Counselor, we're very excited to have you on board. And as I told Christian, when you come back, the honeymoon will be over.
No pun intended.
Enjoy your trip. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to working with you. And thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay cool. Look in on some folks who might not have anybody to check in on them. Thanks.
And their pets.